Today is Thursday, the 21st of November, 2002, and this is Harvey Oyer III, and I am with Charles Chillingworth and his wife, Mary Catherine, at their home. What is the address?
257 Granada Road, West Palm Beach.
And that's in the El Cid neighborhood. I want to start back at the beginning, if we could. Tell me the name of the first Chillingworth to come to South Florida.
That was Charles Curtis Chillingworth, my grandfather.
And the year?
Well, we were just looking at this family history, and it looks to me like he came to Titusville and was admitted to the bar there after an all-day oral examination before Circuit Judge John D. Broome. And that was on February 9th, 1892.
And that was in Titusville. When did he come to what was then Dade County, today Palm Beach County?
He was invited to enter the law firm of Robbins and Graham, the oldest and leading law firm on the east coast of Florida, located in Titusville, for the purpose of opening an office at Juneau. Went to Juneau in April 1892 and established the law firm of Robbins, Graham, and Chillingworth.
And Juneau, of course, was the county seat of Dade County in 1892.
Right. Located in the north end of Lake Worth, about 150 miles from any outside railroad connection. County seat of Dade County. That county then had about 900 population.
And he began practicing law, and shortly thereafter his father moved here, did he not?
Yes, Richard Jolly was his father.
And he moved down here from New York?
Yes. My grandfather mentions that he stayed here until January 1897. And I've shown you this, to me, remarkable farewell banquet for my grandfather of 1897, replete with the menu, which had all kinds of things, game, cold meats, oysters, etc., and all the people.
And this is because he moved to Atlanta in 1897.
He was moving to Atlanta in 1897.
To practice law with, was it a family member?
Yes, McKinley, Eugene McKinley, his brother-in-law.
And then he returned to South Florida after a brief stint in
Yes, after Eugene McKinley went back to New York, then he became a member of the law firm of Chillingworth and Corbett in Atlanta.
That was 4 years later. They were in Atlanta for 4 years.
Okay, until November 1900. Then he returned to West Palm Beach and later established a business there with George G. Curry under the firm name of Chillingworth and Curry.
And in fact, we have some pictures here in your picture book of them in their office. We have two pictures.
Right.
And at the same time, the father, your great-grandfather, Richard Jolly, had stayed here and in fact became the sheriff of Dade County.
Yes, the story is that, and that's again in this history, that there was a lynching in Juneau, or attempted lynching, and the sheriff was unsuccessful in breaking it up, and as a result, the sheriff was taken out of office by the governor, and my great-grandfather was made sheriff of Dade County.
Appointed by the governor,
yeah.
Not elected.
He was later elected.
So you had the father here as the sheriff, and now the son moved back and was in a prominent law practice with George Curry.
Mm-hmm.
Your grandfather was educated at Cornell University in New York?
Yes, he had a scholarship in New York, scholarship that he won on merit, and for 4 years of tuition. So he went to Cornell and graduated there in history.
Now, did Richard Jolly have any other children?
No.
Okay, so Charles C. was his only child.
Correct.
So father, mother, and son were all in South Florida at this point.
Yes. I have to, somewhere around 1900. Let's see. Richard Jolly was an interesting guy. When he was a young man, he took a boat down to Panama and went across the Panama Canal, where the Panama Canal was later built, and contracted malaria, got on a ship to San Francisco, almost died on the ship but didn't, and went out to San Francisco and mined for gold. His mother wrote to him and asked him to come home, and so he came back on the railroad, back to New York. And let's see, he was in the town of Clay in Onondaga County, New York, and it was strongly, even bitterly Republican just before and during the Civil War. But Richard Jolly was a strong Democrat and was twice elected tax collector of the town. He was the first Democrat ever to hold that office. And later, when he became a citizen of the town of Salina, which is another Republican stronghold, he was repeatedly elected tax assessor of the town. It's impossible for me now to conceive of the bitterness existing against Democrats in the North during the Civil War.
And when you say me, you're reading the words of your grandfather
Right.
in a book that he wrote about the Chillingworth family, published in 1935?
Correct. 1936, actually.
1936.
Right after his death.
Now, let's come back to South Florida again. We have Richard Jolly and his wife, who was named Eunice, and Charles is here. Charles married a woman named Anne Seabrook Whaley, Whaley, who died in childbirth,
Yes.
bearing their first child, Walter Seabrook Chillingworth,
Correct.
who would have been one of your father's half-brothers.
Right.
And then Charles remarried, and he married Flora Janella.
No. Walter Seabrook married Flora.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Uncle, my grandfather married Jenny Dietz.
Jenny Dietz, also of Liverpool, New York.
Correct.
Did he go back to New York to find his
He
wife?
did.
And then they had how many more children?
3.
And they were who and in what order?
The oldest was Curtis Eugene. He was 3 years younger than Walter. And then there was,
And he was born in 1896,
yes,
here in
West Palm Beach.
West Palm Beach.
Or he may have been born in Atlanta for all I know. I guess in West Palm Beach, yeah. I guess Aunt Sis may have been born in Atlanta. She was born in 3 years later in 1899. Margarita. And my father, who was Richard Charles Chillingworth, was born in 1902 in West Palm Beach.
And so your father was the youngest.
Correct.
Now, where was the family home in West Palm Beach where your father grew up,
124 Datura.
which is today the site of the Harvey building?
Correct.
Now, you had mentioned to me once before that there was a long-term ground lease on that site. Were you the ones that were was your family the lessee, or was the Harvey building the lessee?
Mr. Harvey came to my grandfather and wanted to buy that place where he had his home and his law office for the Harvey building
And what year would this have been?
in the early 20s.
During the land boom.
Yes,
A lot of growth pressure.
yes. And what they worked out was, instead of selling the property, they did what was reported to be the first 99-year lease in Florida. Don't know if that's accurate, but that's what I've been told. My grandfather devised it, or had learned of it up north. And they did that. There was a considerable payment to my grandfather at the time, and then he received rental payments all along for the 99 years. At the end of the 99 years, of course, it would have come back to him or his descendants. What happened, of course, in 26, as you know, the land boom burst. And Mr. Harvey could not keep up the payments to the bank. The bank then took the property over and operated it, rented out the place. Of course, during the burst, after 26, the people who were in there, many attorneys, could not pay the rent either. The bank, ultimately, it may have been the early 30s, the bank ultimately defaulted and gave the thing back to my grandfather. Just didn't want to pay the rent.
And that would have been during the 30s?
I think in the early 30s.
And so then your grandfather did what with it?
He just rented out the offices. He used his law library it became the law library for the Harvey building, and it later became the nucleus for the Palm Beach County Law Library. In fact, you can still find volumes in there
that were.
with his name on it.
And was he in practice by himself or still with Curry?
Well, he was with Curry for a number of years, and then he went into practice with his son, Curtis, when Curtis came out of the University of Florida, and after he came back from the military in World War I, and before Curtis became a circuit judge in 23.
So the house originally where the Harvey building is was also the law office as well as the family home?
The law office was in the first floor in the front, and the family lived in the back of the first floor and in the second floor.
And in fact, you have a photograph here which
We have several of them.
of that house.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about your father's generation. Tell me about Walter. Well, what became of Walter?
Walter, born in 1894, he spent a great deal of time with Richard Jolly, his grandfather. And their home was about in the location where the Pennsylvania Hotel was.
Tell us where that is today. What would be the landmark where the Pennsylvania Hotel?
Well, it's where the new Catholic Hotel is built down on Flagler, on Ivernia and Flagler.
Ivernia and Narcissus, about where Narcissus would run into Ivernia?
Right.
Okay.
That's correct.
What is that, a condominium or old folks' home today?
Well, it's a sort of a hotel, I
It's
guess.
a conglomerate of Lord's Residence, St. Andrews, but it's all owned by the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And there are various...
Anyway, the one thing for you to know is that from out the back door of my grandfather's house, he could see his father's house across the field, about 3/4 of a block away. And Uncle Walter just liked to go over there and spent the nights there, and he stayed with Richard Jolly and Eunice quite a bit.
What did Walter do as a profession?
Well, he had a number of them. Again, in this history, there's a lot written about Walter. He was a machinist mate and served on subchaser duty, I think it was, in World War I. Very hard duty. He went to Cornell. He was the only one of the children that my grandfather sent to Cornell. He wasn't successful there and left Cornell in about 6 months. I think he went in the service thereafter. Then later he graduated from college. He went, again, by reading this I'd be better able to speak, but he became an engineer. He then became a certified public accountant. He took a job in Washington, D.C. at the General Accounting Office and was working for them there. He entered American University and took his law degree. He told me that he passed the bar exam on the strength of my grandfather and my Uncle Curtis discussing the Paulsgraf case at breakfast one day. And so he, even though he graduated from law school and passed the bar, he continued to work for the General Accounting Office until he retired. And then when he retired, he came down to live in first Riviera Beach, then Lake Park, Florida.
And when did he pass away?
He passed away, I'm thinking somewhere around 1978.
So you had developed a relationship
Yes,
with him.
Uncle
and knew him.
Walter and I knew each other well.
And now the next one was Curtis Eugene.
Yes.
Let's talk about Curtis Eugene. He was born in 1896.
Right.
And he graduated Palm Beach High School in 1914.
That would have been about right.
And then he went to the University of Florida where he read law.
Correct.
And he obtained a Bachelor of Law in 1916.
He was about 20 years old when he graduated from the University of Florida. 1970.
Now, how did he graduate early? Did he
I don't know.
skip courses?
I have no idea. He was a bright student, bright man, and he did well.
Or was he an athlete in college?
I don't really know. Again, I'd probably know more if I read this family history to you. But I know he was a roommate with Spencer Holland.
He was a roommate of future Florida governor and U.S. Senator and College of Law namesake Spencer Holland.
Right.
And upon graduation, he sat for the bar immediately
Yes.
and came home to West Palm Beach to practice.
Yes.
Now, what was his practice initially?
I don't know that.
But we do know he was elected circuit judge in 1923, so he had 6 years. That's a remarkable feat, incidentally, to 6 years out of law school to be our only circuit judge.
I always wondered about that, too. He was about the youngest circuit judge we've had in Florida, but of course, now from this age, I understand that probably my grandfather had something to do with that, since my grandfather was probably the most prominent attorney in the county.
I had heard that Curtis was the town of Palm Beach attorney immediately before becoming circuit judge. Had you ever heard anything about that?
No, I did not know that.
I thought he practiced with Curry and his grandfather.
Uncle Curtis graduated Friday, June 13th, 1913,
From high school?
as a member of the first class to complete the entire high school course on the present Central Borough School grounds. He studied 4 years at the University of Florida and graduated from the College of Law June 5th, 1917. While there, he was a member of Alpha Tau Omega, ATO, Phi Kappa Phi, honorary, and Phi Delta Phi, legal fraternity. At 20 years of age, he was admitted to practice in all the courts of Florida and the United States District Court for the Northern and Southern Districts of Florida, and the United States Circuit Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, which we were in, of course, at that time.
Right.
At the age of 24, he was admitted to the United States Supreme Court. In June 1917, he became a member of the law firm of C.C. and C.E. Chillingworth, in other words, his father. His work with that firm continued until November 1917, when he enrolled in the U.S. Naval Reserve at Key West, Florida. After a course of instruction there, he received a provisional commission as ensign in the Naval Reserve and was transferred to the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland, for further instruction on the duties of a deck naval officer. In September 1918, he received a temporary commission as ensign in the regular Navy and was ordered to sea aboard the USS Minneapolis. That ship performed convoy duty as a part of the United States Cruiser and Transport Force, with headquarters in New York City. After the armistice, his ship was stationed at Hampton Roads, Virginia, for about 30 days. In January 1819, the USS Minneapolis was ordered to San Diego, California, via the Panama Canal. Upon its arrival in San Diego, the ship became the flagship for the senior United States naval officer on the Pacific Ocean. Curtis E. Chillingworth acted as officer of the deck when Rear Admiral W.F. Fulham, U.S. Navy, came aboard and made the ship his flagship. He was detached from the USS Minneapolis in March 1919 and was stationed at the receiving ship in San Francisco, California, while awaiting orders to proceed to Asiatic waters on board a U.S. destroyer, then about to be completed in San Francisco Bay. His resignation from the Navy was accepted upon his arrival home in July 1919. At the present time, he is a Lieutenant J.G. He's saying 1935.
He was a Lieutenant J.G. in the
1935.
Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
So he came home. So he had a 2-year gap from 17 to 19, effectively, where he was on active duty.
Apparently so.
So really, he only practiced 4 years of law before he became a circuit judge.
Apparently so. In 1933, he completed a course in international law through the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, with great credit. And in 1935, he completed a course in military law through the Naval Reserve Educational Center in New Orleans, with a grade of 3.95 out of a possible 4.0. He re-entered the practice of law at the firm of C.C. and C.E. Chillingworth and continued to practice until June 1923. In June 1920, Curtis E. Chillingworth was nominated county judge of Palm Beach County, Florida, and elected as such in November 1920. He served as county judge from January 4th, 1921 until June 13, 1923, when he resigned to become circuit judge on the following day. Having been recommended by the Palm Beach County Bar Association, he was nominated circuit judge of the 15th Judicial Circuit of Florida in June 1922. By successive nominations and appointment, he has served as circuit judge until the present time. In June 1934, he was renominated and later appointed for another term to expire June 30, 1941. He was the youngest person ever to become a circuit judge in Florida. You get an idea his father was proud of him.
Yes, and rightfully so. So the book you're reading from, of course, was published in 1936.
Yes, after my grandfather's death.
And Curtis served as a circuit judge from his election in 23 until his death in 1955.
Right.
Now, what year were you born?
1943.
Okay, so you were 12 years old when he and his wife were murdered.
11, actually.
So tell me your recollection of the events, not only in 55, but also the trial in 61.
Well, let me go back. I knew my uncle well, and he had no son of his own, had 3 daughters who were older. In fact, Anne is 19 years older than I am. Marie is about 17 years older than I am, so that's his youngest daughter. And I was the son he never had. So he would invite me to go to the Grove and to the house at Manalapan. He and I spent a lot of time together. He had a boat, a little outboard motor, had a fiberglass boat after World War II. He learned about all of that in the Navy. One of the only fiberglass boats around. And I think the bottom of it was filled with concrete because it was heavy as it could possibly be.
And the boat he kept here at his Dyer Avenue home or at the beach house?
Beach house. He didn't keep a boat at Dyer Avenue. Dyer Road.
Dyer Road.
And he had a smaller wooden boat with a round bottom that he had me row. And I rowed it up and down. He could see me from where he was, but I rowed all there from Hypaluxo, the Hypaluxo Bridge Road, down to Manalapan and back. And he and I used to go check his lobster pots in the fiberglass boat. Had a 10 horsepower motor. And we'd take off from his property on the lake and go out the Boynton Inlet and go up in front of his property and check the lobster pots and go back.
So he kept the motor boat on the lakeside on a dock.
Absolutely.
So his beach house property stretched from the beach to the lake.
Correct.
With A1A running in between.
Correct. But if you look at that, inlet now, nobody in his right mind would be going in or out that inlet with a 10 horsepower motor and a little 14-foot boat. You know, it's worth your life to go through there with a cruiser. You know. But we would do that, and we would do it on a calm day, no traffic, no people. The whole place down here has changed unbelievably with the number of people.
Now, his beach home is now gone.
Yes, it was taken down.
Where was it? Where was it located?
It was on the curve.
The curve north of the Boynton Inlet where A1A curves to the west.
Correct.
And it sat right there. If A1A didn't curve to the west, if you were northbound on A1A, you would have run into his home. When did that home come down?
Well, after his death, after 1960, probably didn't come down until the 70s.
Yeah, I seem to have a recollection of it when I was a child, and I was born in 68, so I think it was there into the 70s. Now, when you mentioned the Grove, he owned an orange grove in Jupiter, which is today about where Indiantown Road is, west of I-95, near the Loxahatchee River?
Yes, it bordered the Loxahatchee River and the Jupiter Indiantown Road. It was on the southwest corner.
And where was that in relation to the Reese Grove and the Lanehart
Well,
property?
the Reese Grove was further to the east. All that area, in fact, it's still a Reese Grove. And I'm not sure where the Lanehart property was.
Now, did you ever go to the Grove as a child?
Oh, yes.
Did you know that had been a Seminole Indian War battlefield site, or did
Not
you
at
ever
that
find
time.
any relics on the property?
No, not at that time. He probably sold that when I was about 6.
And did you tell me one time that he used the proceeds from the sale of the Grove to purchase the beach house?
Correct.
Okay.
He thought the family would get more use out of the beach house than they would the Grove.
Now, did he actively run the Grove and harvest the citrus and sell it? Or was it
Well, I'm
more
sure
of
it
a
was
hobby farm?
I'm sure it was harvested and sold. He certainly didn't personally do it. Whether how he contracted for it, I don't know.
Did he have a cabin or anything on the lake?
Yes,
Or
sir.
on the Loxahatchee River?
It wasn't on the river. The river was all overgrown at that point. In fact, my father took me on the river when I was a very small boy. And you got along there by Poland, and it was all overgrown.
With cypress?
with all kinds of stuff, Cyprus included, but all kinds of things. And I remember turning around hearing noise, and I turned around in this little boat, and my father wasn't there. And I was very disturbed. And it took a long time, but he finally popped up from under the water where the pole had stuck, and he stayed with the pole. And he had no dry clothes. I had dry clothes. My mother saw to that, but he had no dry clothes.
So, which Chillingworth purchased the grove? Was it Curtis?
Uncle Curtis.
Okay.
It was his.
And he got rid of that about what time?
Somewhere around 1949, 1950.
Okay. And then he acquired the beach house.
Yes.
But his normal home, or his home during the week anyway, was on Dyer Road.
Correct.
What was the address of that?
Gosh, I don't remember the address. I know the house.
Now, did he
About
owned
halfway
quite a...
between Olive and the lake.
So it was in the lake block?
Yeah.
On the north side or the south side?
North side.
And
In fact, Al Cone lived in that house after his death.
Al Cone lived in...
Interestingly enough,
That's
because
very
he
interesting.
was married to Imogene Peel.
Right. Let's talk about that for a moment. Now that's an irony. I know Al Cone, a fine lawyer who's
He is a
probably
great guy.
in his mid-80s now, and he lives up in the Ocala area. He married the wife of Joe Peel, who
Divorced from Joe Peel.
divorced from Joe Peel, who, of course, was convicted of masterminding the murder of your Uncle Curtis.
Correct.
And now, how did he wind up living in the same house?
Bought it.
Tell me your recollection of the trial.
Well,
Did you attend any of the trial?
Yes, I didn't. I was in high school at the time, at Palm Beach High School in 1961. And the trial, it seems to me, was in the spring, 61. The murders having been committed back in 55. But it took a long time before the case was broken. And they had had already the trial of Hosaffel and
Lincoln?
Bobby Lincoln was given immunity for his testimony. And my brother-in-law, Archie Odom, married my older sister, Julie, he was a judge in Fort Myers at that time on the circuit bench. And he came by here, picked me up, and took me up. We met Judge McCarty, John McCarty. And John McCarty got us 2 seats in there with my Uncle Lauren. Uncle Lauren had been up there working with Phil O'Connell the whole...
Now, who's Uncle Lauren?
He was married to Margarita Simon.
Okay.
He was an attorney, very good attorney.
What was Lauren's surname?
Lauren is his first name. Lauren Simon. No,
Simon.
S-I-M-O-N.
Simon, okay.
Okay.
That's-
And the father of Jean Dale and Rita Simon.
okay.
And Uncle Lauren had gone through the whole trial with Phil O'Connell. They worked together on it.
And Phil O'Connell was the state's
state
attorney.
attorney.
Okay.
And again, I knew all these people. I knew his sons and daughter, Danny and Phil and Judy. They live on Edgewood. They lived on Edgewood at that time. And Archie and I were up there for the final argument, the day of the final argument. So we watched.
Who was the judge?
I don't remember that. I remember the attorney, the bright young attorney who Phil O'Connell got to assist him, was Eugene Spellman, who later became a judge, federal district judge, very fine man. And he's a cripple. He was a cripple at that time. Remember, he was known as a scholar, and he was. And he took his right forefinger and pounded the table to make a point to the jury many times with that right forefinger, as if somebody else might have used their fist. That made an impression upon me. And Spellman was wonderful. He was great. Just a very young man at that point.
Who defended Peel?
I'm trying to remember. It was a fellow that Peale had gone to law school with at Stetson University. Basically, Peale was acting as his own attorney, and his friend was assisting him as best he could. I don't mean that Peale was speaking, but he was masterminding the defense.
Now, did you ever know Peale?
No, I knew his cousin. His first name, I think, was David, who lived 2 blocks over in Barcelona. And he and I were friends. David was a little bit older than I was. He'd had an injury as a child and had been injured in his head. But a nice guy, friendly guy.
Now, what I've always heard about Peale is he was a very good-looking, charming, articulate man who just had a bad moral compass and did a lot of things wrong. In fact, Al Cohn had told me that he had traveled out to Clewiston or Pahokee or somewhere on a case with him and thought he had behaved unethically. This was several years before the murder of your Uncle Curtis. Mm-hmm. And there were always stories, I guess substantiated, of bolita rackets that he was involved in and the attempted murder twice of one of his law partners, presumably to collect life insurance proceeds. So according to Al Cohn, who had a list of Joe Peale stories, he sounded like a pretty bad character.
I would believe Al Cohn. That's consistent with everything I know. He is known to have had intercourse with most of the women clients of his, many of them, including Holzapfel's wife.
Which is eventually what got Holzapfel
Yes.
to turn against him, even though Holzapfel knew he was going to go to prison himself.
Well, Holzapfel was, at that point, had a death sentence. He was convicted and or pled guilty, I forget which, and he had a death sentence. And he was not offered anything to give testimony against Joe Peale, but by then he hated Joe Peale. He had understood what Joe Peale had done to him and testified against Joe Peale of his own volition.
Now, Peale was sent to prison, and he died just a few years ago, as a matter of fact. He was
Correct.
released.
Finally released about a month before he died of cancer, and he was in Jacksonville, as I understand it, and died.
Now, his natural-born son is...
I don't want to mention anything about that because I don't think we want to have that continue on.
Okay.
We just need to bury that,
Okay.
I think.
Fair enough. Let's talk about your father and your aunt, the last 2 children that we haven't talked about. What happened to your aunt? Did she stay here? And
Yes. Aunt Sis married a very fine man, my Uncle Lauren Simon. He went to work in the law firm of Chillingworth and Simon. And then when my grandfather retired from the law practice because my grandfather had diabetes and he went blind, could no longer practice for the last couple of years of his life.
He was blind when he wrote this book?
Well, he was getting blind. In fact, my mother helped him write it, helped him type it and so on. They would work on it together. And he was failing the last couple of years. And Aunt Sis married a gentleman by the name of Lawrence Simon. His brother Ford came to Florida with him, and his father was called Papa Charlie. Very nice guy. I never knew him, but he was quite a fellow. And they had come from Kansas. They had grown corn in Kansas. And reportedly, the father had shown farmers in Florida how to grow corn. Back then they were having difficulty because the wind was sweeping across and knocking corn stalks over. And he did what they had done in Kansas, which was to plant sunflowers in alternating rows. And that allowed corn to be grown. Later they had stronger stalks. And the Uncle Lauren's brother was Ford Simon, and he had a mortuary here. Simon Fayetteville Zern. It's here for many years. In fact, the business is still here, but doesn't have Simon on it anymore. and Uncle Ford was a great guy. He had a house up in North Carolina. Uncle Lauren had a house up in North Carolina on Lake Summit. And we used to go up there. We used to see them quite often. I mean, it was the whole family, Uncle Curtis, Uncle Lauren, my father, their wives, all the kids, very close. We got together often until I was 11.
Now, your father was the youngest,
Yes.
and he too became a lawyer?
Yes, he went off to the University of Florida, 6 years younger than my Uncle Curtis. And
Was he an ATO at Florida as well?
Yes, he was an ATO at Florida. And he was getting ready to go to law school. I guess the situation changed a little by that time, and the law school was a separate part. So my grandfather said that he was not going to spend any more money for my father to party at the University of Florida in the ATO house. And he was instead going to send him to law school in Birmingham. So he went to law school, forgetting the name of it.
I just went blank too.
Cumberland?
Cumberland Law School. And my grandfather was reading the newspaper one morning at breakfast. My grandfather was supposed to graduate from law school that following June, and this was somewhat earlier in the year. And
You said grandfather.
Your father was scheduled to
my
graduate.
father was scheduled to graduate from Cumberland later in the year. My grandfather was reading the newspaper, and he saw where a Richard Chillingworth had become a member of the bar. Back then, you didn't have to graduate first. You could take the bar early. So my grandfather had traveled down to Tallahassee without telling anybody, took the bar, and became a lawyer in Florida.
Now tell me your father's full name.
Richard Charles Chillingworth.
Richard Charles. So Richard Jolly, your great-grandfather, was he a lawyer as well?
No, he was not. In fact, my grandfather, Charles Curtis Chillingworth, was the first college graduate we know of after William Chillingworth, who was a teacher and a master at Oxford back in the 1700s.
So your grandfather, Charles C., was a lawyer, and his son Walter had a law degree.
And became a member of the bar, yes.
And his son Curtis, of course, was a very prominent lawyer and judge.
Yes.
And his daughter, Marguerite,
Was married to a lawyer.
married to a lawyer.
Very prominent also.
And then your father became a lawyer.
Yes.
And you too became a lawyer. So
Yes.
virtually everyone in this family has been in the law profession.
Yes, till now.
And your father had what type of practice?
Well, he did real estate and probate, and he got into tax law. As you know, the tax code came out in 1939, and 1954 there was a big revision. My father died in about March of 1955, but he had gotten into the practice of tax law well before anybody made any money at it. And he left the law firm that he was in with my Uncle Lauren. They had taken over the family practice. Uncle Lauren first, and then Pop. And he left that and joined the accounting firm of Hines and Hines. And most of what I remember, he was working for Hines and Hines as a lawyer in the office doing tax law.
Now, you just mentioned that your father died in March of 1955.
Mm-hmm.
3 months later, in June of 1995, his brother Curtis was murdered.
Right.
So you lost your father at a very young age. You were 11 years old.
Right.
So you were raised by your mother,
Yes.
and do you have brothers or sisters?
2 sisters. One's passed away. Actually, I had my father and mother had 4 children total. Julie is the oldest and the only one still, other than me, still alive. She lives in Gainesville now. She teaches at Santa Fe Community College up there in English. And her husband was Archie Odom, who was a circuit judge for many years over in Lee County. He passed away in 1983.
So she lived over in Fort Myers for
Fort
most
Myers
of her
and Punta
career.
Gorda.
And then after her husband's death, she moved to Gainesville.
And finished finally the degree she had started in 1947 at Florida State. She finally finished when she was in her 60s at the University of Florida, and then went on to get a master's in English.
And that's your oldest sibling.
That's right.
You
She's 14 years older than I am.
And you said there are 4, so who are the
Well,
other 2?
The next one down is Jenny, and Jenny married Ed Wadsworth, and they had 2 children, and they were divorced. She married Ralph Allen, who still lives here. He was from Atlanta, Georgia. He still lives here in West Palm Beach, retired. And she passed away in 1999.
And she was how many years older than you?
12.
12 years older than you. And are you the third one?
No, I'm the 4th.
You're the baby.
There was a 3rd daughter, Carol, and she was a few years younger than Jenny. Quite a few years younger than Jenny, I guess, like 5 or 4. Each of my grandfather's children that he had with Jenny Dietz had 3 daughters. So there were 9 girls to the family. Uncle Walter never had any children. But both Uncle Curtis and my father, as well as Aunt Sis, all of them had 3 daughters. And my sister, Carol, was killed. She was about 7 years of age, and she was living on Avondale Road, now Monroe. And she took her little bicycle and she was going across the railroad tracks and apparently got her foot stuck in the tracks. The train came. And she was killed about Christmas time.
And were you born yet at this time?
No, I think I was born thereafter to replace her. She was born. She died in 1942. I was born in September of 43, and I think that I might not have been born.
Had she not died. And now, tell me about your growing up here in West Palm Beach. The house we're sitting in, and again, the address is
257 Granada Road.
This house was built by whom and for whom?
Well, it was built by a builder by the name of Wilcox, and he built it for himself. He had gone all over the world and picked out various and sundry things, the living room ceiling, and he has a sobering up shower upstairs with 7 nozzles, and he has places to hire beer and booze all over the house.
Was this Prohibition when the house was built?
Yes.
Early 20s?
Early 20s. 23, somewhere in there. And my grandfather had just agreed to let Mr. Harvey build the Harvey building. And so he had done the 99-year lease. I don't know whether that was on the tape or not, the 99-year lease. Okay. And so Mr. Wilcox wired my grandfather in New York, and asked him to, if he wanted this house, that he had to sell it. My grandfather said yes. And so when he came back from Europe, they'd taken a 6-week trip to Europe. Didn't want to see the old house being torn down. Then they took over this house.
So your grandfather, Charles C., took a trip to Europe via New York because he didn't want to watch his house where the Harvey building is today being torn down.
Well,
and it was while he
mostly my grandmother didn't want to watch it torn down.
And while he was in New York, on his way to Europe, is when he received the wire from Mr. Wilcox, need to sell the house, do you want it? And tell me quickly why Wilcox had to sell the house.
Well, my grandfather learned later that the problem was that Mr. Wilcox had gotten in his cups, as he was wont to do, and he invited 40 of Florence Ziegfeld Follies girls to go to...
That's 40 of them.
To go to Cuba with him on the Florida-Havana car ferry.
Which they did.
Which they accepted.
And his wife wasn't thrilled about it.
His wife was unhappy. My mother always said that if he had taken 1, she'd have divorced him. But taking 40, what could he do?
So his wife divorced him, and he now no longer had a use for the house?
Well, and probably couldn't afford the house.
And he needed to sell it, and your grandfather purchased it.
Yes.
And how long did your grandfather, and what year was that? 1924?
Let me look here a second.
You won't find it anymore.
Oh, okay. I have this book open in front of me.
It could be
But
23 or it could be 24.
somewhere in there. My mother and father were married in this
We do have
house.
some family members who say that they recall attending social occasions in this house as early as 1922.
But we don't know that that's
We
accurate.
don't know for certain whether it was 23 or 22, but somewhere in that area.
And how did the house pass into your father's hands?
Well, same way it passed into mine. Basically, my grandfather died in 1936. My grandmother...
So you never knew your grandfather?
No, never knew him. I knew my grandmother, Maymon, we called her.
What did you call her?
Maymon.
Maymon.
Maymon. Her parents spoke German. They were from Germany. She was born in New York, but of German descent. Wonderful lady. She was very high up in the American Legion Auxiliary and went to Europe fairly often with respect to that. Took my mother one time, took Aunt Sis one time.
Aunt Sis is
Marguerite.
Marguerite, but we call her Aunt Sis.
I did, yeah. My father called her Sis, and I called her Aunt Sis.
Okay.
Anyway, I forget where I was.
About the house passing from your grandfather to your
Well, my sister Julie was due to be married, and the reception was to be in this house in 1949, the end of 1949. And 2 weeks before the wedding, my grandmother passed away. And so they scaled the wedding way down. They were going to cancel it, but decided not to cancel it. But my grandmother wouldn't have wanted that, so they scaled it way down. And my grandmother owned the house, of course, and it was a homestead. And you're familiar with the descent of homesteads in Florida. So it descended to my father, Aunt Sis, and Uncle Curtis. My other uncle, Uncle Walter, had already renounced his interest in it because he had no children, and he lived in Washington, and he renounced that, and he renounced any residuary interest in the Harvey building at the same time. My father and my uncle and my aunt each received about 2/7 of the income. Uncle Walter received about 1/7 of the income. That's the way they had done it. Anyway, so my father owned 1/3 of the house. My aunt and uncle had the property appraised. I guess for tax purposes it had to be done. And my uncle decided that the price was too high, so he would lower it by $2,000. And my aunt was indignant. Where was Curtis coming from that he had the right to lower it by $2,000? She lowered another $2,000. So that's what happened. And I think my father ended up paying $27,000 for the house.
To buy out their interest.
Probably paid each of them $9,000. And he had it paid off before his death in 55.
And when he died in 55, how did the house come into
Again, descent of homestead again. And
went to your mother?
the life estate went to my mother. The remainder went to the 3 children, Julie, Jenny, and myself.
And then you bought out your sisters?
After my mother died in 75, then I bought out my sister's interest. And at that time, the house was worth about $120,000. It was appraised by Ann Owen, friend of the family, Judge Owen's wife.
Tell me Chillingworth Drive, which is a north-south street just west of I-95. It intersects Okeechobee. Which family member was that named after,
Well,
if anyone in particular?
we had nothing to do with it. It was a part of Perini's development's westward expansion. And my sister Jenny was curious about it, so she called them. And they said, no, it was just named after the family in general. It's the Chillingworth family.
What year would that have been?
Well, westward expansion took place in the 50s, middle 50s, middle to late 50s, 56, 57, all in there.
Was
You
that
remember-
after Curtis's death? That
Yes.
Perini? So
Yes.
maybe
Could have been for Curtis, but
in honor of.
they said it was just for the family as a whole.
Now, is the Spencer Drive that's near it named after the pioneer Spencer family?
I don't know that. It might well have been. Because that's what Perini was doing at that time.
You were about to say something. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I just said westward expansion is when we have the road going straight across Clear Lake. Until then, Okeechobee wandered around the south end of...
Right, we didn't have
Okeechobee.
today's Okeechobee that
Right.
cut through Clear Lake. We had old Okeechobee that went around it.
Right. And the only thing out there was the Okeechobee Drive-In, now the Okeechobee Steakhouse.
The Okeechobee Steakhouse was a
Drive-In.
drive-in restaurant.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't talk about your family. When did you marry?
I married for the first time on May 20th, 1967.
To who?
Vanette Elizabeth Anderson.
Elizabeth Anderson.
Vanette Elizabeth Anderson.
Vanette Elizabeth Anderson. And did you have children?
Yes, we had two sons.
And when were they born and what were their names?
Richard Charles Chillingworth II was born at Fort Lewis, Washington, while I was in the Army, on December 20th, 1968. And Michael, whose full name is Michael Anderson Chillingworth, was born June 7th, 1972, in Gainesville, Florida, at about the time I was graduating from law school.
Let's talk about your education. You told me you graduated from Palm Beach High School in
61.
What did you do immediately after high school?
I went to the University of Florida.
Undergraduate.
Undergraduate.
Were you an ATO as well?
Yes. And I spent 4 years there, did not graduate, and joined the Army as an airborne volunteer in June of 66. Went through a year's training, became an officer, going through Fort Sill, OCS. And then I was assistant fire direction officer, and then executive officer, and then battery commander.
Of an artillery unit?
Of an artillery battery, 155 millimeter self-propelled howitzers. We were stationed in Nuremberg, Germany, the old SS Kaserne there. And then we were part of a reforger project, they still do. Went to Fort Lewis, Washington, where Richard was born. And then I got out of there in May of 1969, my tour duty being up. Went back to the University of Florida and finished up in March of 1970. Entered the Holland Law Center there and graduated in June of 72.
You went directly from your undergraduate degree to your law degree.
Right.
Now, remind me again what year you got married.
67.
67. So you were in the military when you
I
got
was in
married.
the military. That my wife-to-be and I had known each other at the University of Florida.
Was she from West Palm Beach?
No, she was from Michigan, and all over her. Her father had been a naval officer and had been all over the world. But mostly they were from Michigan. And she and I had discussed that we weren't going to get married if I was going to go to Vietnam. I got my orders about early in May, and we decided to get married. So we got married June 20th, and I went to Germany, and she followed me over there.
Okay, so you never went to Vietnam.
Never went to Vietnam.
And when did you move back to West Palm Beach? Upon graduation from law school?
Right, 1972.
And did you go into the family practice, or was there a family practice left at that point?
Well, my Uncle Lauren passed away in 1971. He would have been happy for me to go in with him, or to do that. There was a family friend by the name of Manly Caldwell.
I know Manly.
Well, you probably know the son.
Okay.
This is the father.
The one who started Caldwell and Passetti.
Correct. And he had talked to my mother about getting me into that law firm. And I accepted a position there.
At Caldwell and
At
Passetti.
Passetti. Now, Mr. Passetti died in 1970, and Mr. Caldwell died in 1971 also. So I actually took over the office, the position that he had, took over as secretary and the whole thing.
And how long did your marriage last? Your first marriage?
We were divorced in 1979.
Okay, and when did you remarry?
in 1985.
Okay, and your current wife is named
Mary Catherine Prince.
Prince was the maiden name.
Mm-hmm.
And you've since had another child.
Yes, Christopher Curtis Chillingworth. He was born August 4th, 1990.
And he's in school locally.
He's in school at Poinciana Day School.
Now, I notice you reuse a lot of family names. There's a lot of Richards, a lot of Curtises, and a lot of Charleses.
There's a Charles either as a first name or a middle name in just about every generation as you go through this history.
Was Christopher a family name, or was
No,
that a new introduction?
That's a new introduction.
Okay.
And Michael was a new one too.
I didn't really ask you about growing up here on the lake. You grew up in this home, one house west of what is today Flagler Drive in El Cid. There was no Flagler Drive here when the house was built.
When the house was built, there was no Flagler Drive.
Was there a
when I
Flagler
moved in
Drive
here in
when you were here?
1950, there was a Flagler Drive, but it ended just beyond Barcelona. There was no road between Barcelona and the bridge, the middle bridge.
And was there a seawall along the lake, or was it still a beach when you were a kid?
Well, there was a seawall as long as there was a road. In other words, the seawall went down to just beyond Barcelona.
Just north of here,
Yeah, just north of
a
Barcelona.
couple of blocks.
Yeah, Barcelona's 2 blocks away.
So you had a beach.
Well, down there we had a beach, but there, at Flagler there were, you could go 5 minutes and not see a car.
Now, did you have a boat on the lake, a sailboat? Did you spend
No.
any time on the water as a child?
I spent a lot of time in the water, but because of the seawall and so on, we couldn't keep a boat in the lake. They didn't have a dock or anything. The El Cid dock is down there, but they don't let you keep a boat there either. After my father's death, and of course my uncle's death, my mother bought for me a small duck boat, about 12 feet long and about 3 feet wide, or 3.5 feet wide. And we had a little 5 horsepower outboard motor my mother bought me, and I traveled all over the lake in that.
What other things did you do as a child here, and who were some of your childhood friends?
Well, we had friends all up and down. Jackie Ehrman, a block away in Venetia, his family had come from the folks that they named the Ehrman River after.
You descended from Joe Ehrman, who was, I believe, the first mayor of West Palm Beach.
I think so. Mm-hmm. And Byron Valier was over there on Valencia and Sunset. He was on Sunset. Johnny Carpenter over on Barcelona, and David Peel. Johnny Carpenter's father had Carpenter Sheet Metal. Fine gentleman. Used to go hunting with them out on their property off 441.
Hunting for what?
Quail, mostly. Dove and quail. My uncle Curtis, when I was a small boy, he had told me that he would take me hunting when I was 10. And sure enough, good to his word, when I turned 10 years of age, he arranged a hunting trip. Now, he arranged that by calling my brother-in-law, Archie, and asking Archie to put on a hunting trip over there if he would. Well, Archie was delighted. And we went to a place called Badcock's Pasture, owned by Fred Badcock and his father, same name, out east of Punta Gorda, mostly. It's about 100,000 square acres. Big place. And we went with my brother-in-law, who was a county judge at that time, with Judge Gerald, who was a circuit judge at that time, my uncle, who was, of course, was a circuit judge, and with the sheriff of Lee County, Snag Thompson, and with an attorney by the name of Elmer Friday, who later became county judge, circuit judge, and president of the Senate. Elmer's the only one of them still alive is Elmer, and he's I guess he's retired as a circuit judge now in Lee County. Great guy. And that was my first hunting trip. Great hunting trip. We had a trustee from the jail, which of course you don't do anymore. The man would keep the camp and do the cooking and all that sort of thing.
He was a trustee from the jail?
Yeah.
What does that mean? What would a trustee from the jail be?
A trustee would be somebody who was an inmate at the jail who was worthy of trust. And they had them back then.
And you were allowed to borrow them and take them hunting with you?
Yes, nobody thought anything about it, and of course he was delighted to get out of the jail and go out in the...
Who would have authorized this? Your Uncle Curtis?
No, Uncle Curtis didn't have jurisdiction in Lee County.
Oh, it was a Lee County trustee.
Yeah, a Lee
Okay.
County trustee, and...
But not an uncommon practice even over here.
oh, no, not at all. You know, you had trustees, and they would go do all kinds of work for all kinds of people, doing all kinds of things.
Not compensated for it.
No, but allowed to get out of the jail, you know.
Now, did you hunt anywhere in Palm Beach County?
Over the years,
Yeah, as a child.
I went out to the Corbett area, but that's about all. I've been out the Everglades hunting.
Where did you go to elementary school and junior high school?
Well, I went to elementary school first at Southborough Elementary, which is now burned down. And I keep telling my wife that I used to ride my bicycle all the way to Southborough from here.
And where was Southborough Elementary?
Well, it's where Phipps Park is. It's south of Southern Boulevard, about 3 blocks.
On Olive.
No, just west of Dixie.
I'm sorry, just west of Dixie. That's where they just built the new fire station.
Yes, and they had
And put a
built a whole,
skateboard park in.
took down the tennis courts, all that
So
stuff.
that's quite a long bicycle ride.
Yeah, but I did.
Wasn't a whole lot of traffic.
I was happy. Yeah, not much traffic. That's the point.
Where did you attend junior high school?
At Central. I went to Belvedere for 5th grade and 6th grade after my father's death, and I went the first 4 grades at. I guess I was going to Belvedere at the time my father died, and then I went to Central Elementary. Central.
High school.
Well, in junior high, I really didn't do much. In high school, I had a boat with a 25 horse outboard, and on the weekends we would go water skiing mostly.
Up and down the lake.
Up and down the lake, all the way up to Trapper Nelson's. Skied all the way up to Trapper Nelson's and back. We were young and we had lots of energy.
Now, did you ever meet Trapper Nelson?
No, I never did.
Shifting gears one more time, your Uncle Curtis owned a lot of land in Palm Beach County.
Yes.
And I understood that he bought a lot of it in tax deed sales.
That's my understanding.
Is any of that land still in the family?
Well, of course, it was whatever was around at the time of his death in '55 was inherited by Neva, Ann, and Marie. And they had land up in Jupiter.
Give the names of his 3 daughters again.
Neva Chillingworth, Ann Chillingworth Wright, and Marie Chillingworth Cooper.
And where do they live?
Neva lives in Miami. Ann lives in Gainesville with her husband George Wright. George grew up here too. And his father had the insurance company, Wright and Seaton. And when George graduated from Emory University in Atlanta in building construction, he came down here to work with Mr. Arnold. And he went to Gainesville and started a firm by the name of Arnold and Wright. But he always owned the whole thing. They thought they might do some work together, but they never really did. And
Third sister?
the third child of Uncle Curtis and Aunt Midge was Marie, who married Bill Cooper. And Bill was an engineer for Exxon. Worked in New Jersey and in Manhattan and all over the place. I think he supervised about 600 engineers. Fine guy. And they live up in Easton, Maryland and in Jacksonville.
They now live in Jacksonville.
Well, they live in Jacksonville during the winter and Easton, Maryland during the summer.
Okay.
And
So all of Curtis's, your Uncle Curtis's children, your cousins, are now out of Palm Beach County.
yes,
Any of that land that was in the estate would have been sold?
yes, they've sold all of it, I think, at this point.
I had heard stories that the twins that worked in the clerk's office,
Thaddy and Thelma,
Thaddy and Thelma,
I knew them.
that your Uncle Curtis would come down in between trials and during recesses and ask him if there were any tax deeds being issued, and completely legal, but he sort of beat everyone to the punch to buy the property.
I don't doubt it, but I didn't know about it.
Any significant areas of Palm Beach County that he owned the land that you could identify, or was it just a
Well,
Uncle Curtis
owned land down in the southern part of West Palm Beach, near the lake. I know Mr. Passetti of Caldwell Passetti told me that he purchased his lot down there from Uncle Curtis. And he said there was only one price, and that was the price you paid, and it was a fair price. But I think there wasn't a lot of, business has changed a lot in 100 years. And for instance, I always wondered when my grandfather bought this house, how'd they figure out the price? Well, back then so much, the people knew what things were going for. They knew what they were worth. They knew what a fair price was. And the fair price was what was going to get to the transaction. No more, no less. And there just wasn't the haggling we have today.
Do you know what your grandfather paid for this house?
No, I don't. Do you, Kat?
Not reliably so, no.
But you did tell me that the house due east of you, he attempted to buy the property before the house was built.
Yeah, that house wasn't built until well after my grandfather's death. It wasn't built until...
48, I think.
Huh? 40?
48?
Something like that.
He tried to buy the lot for $3,000 and
Right.
they wanted $10,000.
The lady wanted $10,000. He said it wasn't worth $10,000, so he didn't buy it.
Of course, that's a lot that would be in demand today. It's on
Well,
Flagler
it'd
overlooking
be worth
the lake.
well over $1 million just for the land.
And it's a big lot.
Big corner lot?
Yeah, sure. But we probably wouldn't own it because we couldn't have paid the taxes on it.
That's right, during the Depression. Let's get back to Curtis again. What kind of man was he?
Uncle Curtis was a wonderful man. I mean, I've heard all kinds of stories.
Well, you know him as a nephew. How did the others in the community perceive him?
There was no criticism of Uncle Curtis.
He was a very stoic, austere
Well,
sort of man, or that was his reputation.
things can be played up or played down. After his death, people wrote articles about him. A gentleman by the name of Bishop wrote a book about him. And, sometimes the truth doesn't sell well. Sometimes people are looking for the glamorous or the
Or
sensationalism or something you can, some idiosyncrasy that you can pass off. But that is not an accurate picture of Uncle Curtis.
Tell me who the real Uncle Curtis was.
The real Uncle Curtis was a man to ride the river with. He was a very, very fine man.
Fun, sense of humor?
Fun, humorous, everything you'd ever want. He was unselfish, kind, considerate, very thoughtful. Probably he gets the harsh reputation because he felt, as I feel, that in the law you need to set the lines clearly, not mushed around. In other words, if there's a hard decision to make, he would make it. And that, I think, is what lawyers and people want and need. They need to have the meat cleaver come down, everything to the one side go one way and the other side go the other way, and that's what the law is, and that's the way it runs.
He would not be a liberal jurist today.
Well, the words liberal and conservative have undergone lots of changes too. So I don't want to use the labels. I would rather say that he was fair, he was just, he was compassionate, but he was firm. And you couldn't go to him as a lawyer with some kind of argument that wasn't solid, wasn't sound, wasn't good, and have any success whatsoever. Okay? Uncle Joe White, who became a circuit judge with Uncle Curtis.
Now, you call him Uncle Joe White. Was he actually a relative?
No, he was just that close a friend of the family. Both a close friend of my uncle's and a close friend of my father's.
Now, was White the judge that took Curtis's place when Curtis went away to World War II?
Correct.
So Curtis, your Uncle Curtis was our only circuit judge until he left for the war, and they replaced him with White, and then when Curtis came back from the war...
I'm sure they didn't replace him with White. I'm sure that Uncle Curtis replaced him with
chose his own replacement.
I'm quite sure of that.
And then when your Uncle Curtis returned from the war,
Then they had two circuit judges.
they probably created another seat on the bench for your Uncle Curtis.
Undoubtedly.
Now, you're touching on something else that I've heard a lot of stories about, that your Uncle Curtis was probably politically the most powerful man in our county during his run, during his generation from the 20s to the 50s.
Yeah, here's the story. You asked me about Uncle Curtis. Let me finish with that. There are many stories you can tell about Uncle Curtis, and I'll tell you a couple that kind of give you an insight. But he was fair, he was honest, he was straightforward, he was absolutely untouchable. Absolutely untouchable. Absolutely the most honest individual, along with my father, along with my uncle, that I have ever known. I went into the practice of law because of the people that I knew as my father and my uncle's friends, and them. I'm not happy with where the legal profession is today, and the kind of people that are messing around with the law. They seem to have lost a great deal. But in any event, my uncle was stopped because he was speeding. And the officer, he pulled over. He always drove the cheapest little Ford, little two-door black Ford. I think he was still driving in 1951 at his death. Standard shift, of course, and all that. Nothing ostentatious about Uncle Curtis at all, anytime, ever. And he always lived way, way below his means. And the police officer came up and saw who it was and started apologizing for having pulled him over. And Uncle Curtis says, "No, you were doing the right thing. I was speeding. Now you write me the ticket." That's the way it needs to be. And he paid the ticket. That was Uncle Curtis. You know, far, far different from what you might hear about other people. Uncle Joe White told me the story about during the Depression. He says, your grandfather, the judge's father, had all the good clients in town. And he says, the rest of us just tried to, make out with what we could, He says, during the Depression, every now and then you'd get a $5 fee. And then there were some small ones. And he says, this poor fellow came in to see me. Your grandfather's client was repleving, I forget what it was, and had a perfect right to do so. And he says, we didn't really have any defense to it. It was proper. But he says, I had nothing else to do. So I sat there and read this replevin bond. Well, in a replevin bond, then, as it is now, you've got to write the words to the governor. This bond has to be made to the governor of the state of Florida. Well, the words to the governor were left out. Now, my grandfather had the first typewriter in Palm Beach County, so we understand. But when this was typed up, this replevin bond, to the governor wasn't in there. And Uncle Joe White had read this whole thing. So they went in for the replevin hearing. Now, guess who it was in front of? Uncle Curtis. He was the only judge there. But nobody, not Uncle Joe, not anybody else, worried about going before Uncle Curtis, even when Uncle Curtis's father was litigating. And Uncle Joe White made his argument. He said the words to the governor do not appear. And Uncle Curtis turned to his father. And my grandfather was supposed to have said something like, well, let me see that. Secretary made a mistake. And the judge said, now, Father, this is not the secretary's error, it's your error. Replevin is denied. And that was it.
That's a true story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Judge Curry, who was C.G. Curry's son, who was the small claims court judge here for so many years, Banzai Curry.
Yes.
I had a case in front of him one time for about $65. A friend of mine who was a neurologist was stiffed by an attorney, and so I took the case, and we got a judgment for the $65 against this attorney. And Judge Curry, I try and tell Judge Curry what time I had spent for attorney's fees and so on and so forth. He says, Charles, I'm going to give you exactly the same fee that your uncle would have given me. You'll get 1/3 the sum for your attorney's fees, no more. Anyway, that's the way it went.
Well, I never knew Banzai Curry, but Bill Sned, who you know,
Yes.
told me one time that when he first started practicing law here, he had a case in front of Banzai Curry, and the opposing counsel were from out of town. And he walked in, and the judge looked at him and said, Billy, how's your beautiful mama doing? And he said, very good, thank you, Your Honor. And he said, Billy, do these folks owe your client money? And he said, yes, sir, they do. And he hammered his gavel and he said, judgment for the plaintiff, without even listening to the attorneys from out of town.
Well, my uncle wouldn't have done that, but one of the circuit judges up there, I'm trying to remember his name now, he was in probate for years and years and years and years. I can see his face so clearly. He said when he was a very young attorney, he had gotten in a divorce case. And it was a black man, and or he had a wife, a black couple. And my uncle had a habit of sitting in his hearing room, long table, of course. He sat at the end of the table. And he had a habit of turning around in a swivel chair and looking out the window. The people would come in and sit down, then he would turn around. He did that. And the attorneys, this is a big case for them, because, I mean, again, the Depression, and there was nothing happening, so they were happy to have some work. And my uncle turned around, didn't let the attorney say anything, and he looked at the lady and says, aren't you Claude Reese's maid? Yes, Your Honor, I am. And he looked over at the man and says, and aren't you my gardener? The man says, yes, Your Honor, I am. He said, well, you two can't have a divorce. Now get on out here and make up. And they went out in the hall and they made up. That was it. No divorce.
Now, you mentioned Claude Reese. Claude Reese was one of your Uncle Curtis's best friends.
Yes.
And ironically, they were all in school with my grandmother, your Uncle Curtis and my grandmother, who was Lillian Voss at the time, later married an Oyer, were at Palm Beach High School together. The Reese family, did you grow up friendly with them as well?
No, I didn't know them. I mean, I met some of them later on in life, but I didn't know them then.
Wasn't your Uncle Curtis coming home from a dinner the night he and his wife were murdered? Do you know whose house they were at?
It might have been the Reeses.
I had thought it might be,
might
but I
have
wasn't
been.
sure. Right after your Uncle Curtis was murdered, virtually a day or two later, his resignation letter hit the governor's desk. Why had he resigned as circuit judge? And is there any relation to...
I have no idea. I did not know that. And I have not heard of that before.
What, and I know I read the book years ago on the murder trial, but what was Peel's motive for having your uncle murdered?
As I understand it, when there were two circuit judges, and you pointed out that Uncle Curtis was powerful, Uncle Joe White was a very good attorney. He was selected to be circuit judge by my uncle because he was arguably the best attorney in town. And they had an informal system. Again, the sheriff worked for them. The prosecutor worked for them. The hierarchy was there. If you didn't like what my uncle said, you had to go to Tallahassee and convince those judges in Tallahassee that my uncle was wrong.
Was there an intermediate appellate court at the time?
No.
So if you appealed a trial decision, it went directly to the
You
Florida
went to
Supreme Court.
Tallahassee. And my uncle was not reversed 3-4 times in his lifetime. Just didn't happen. They had Uncle Curtis up there to the Supreme Court of Florida writing some difficult cases. In fact, one decision that he wrote is still the law on libel in Florida, all about Marjorie Kennan Rollins and Cross Creek and
Now, he was asked to sit on the Florida Supreme Court,
yes, he was.
and he declined.
He declined.
He didn't want to leave his home.
Didn't want to leave West Palm Beach. I forget which governor it was. That. I know my sister spent some time in the governor's mansion up there, and it was probably that same governor when she was going to college up there in 47, 48. Probably the same governor as the friend of the wasn't Spencer Holland. He had already left the office by then and was a senator. And by the way, Kath, I still haven't seen that picture in the back of the boat. I remember the boat, sport fishing boat. I think it was Claude Reese's boat that had Spencer Holland and Uncle Curtis.
Oh, well, that's not one we own. We don't have that one, I don't think.
I saw it just a few weeks ago.
You did?
Anyway, that was after about 1945, somewhere in there.
After Spencer Holland was out of office.
I think he was just. I think that's wrong. I think he was just entering office. Maybe it was the early 40s.
Okay.
Just entering office. I know he was the governor during the wartime. And the connection stayed very strong. Spencer Holland had secured me a position at the Naval Academy, which I should have taken. But by then I'd already spent a year at the University of Florida, and I wanted to go back and party.
So the ATO parties, that problem ran in the family?
Yes. Yes, straight through. And I've lost my place here.
Well, we were talking about your Uncle Curtis being asked to sit on the Florida Supreme Court and declining.
He declined. He did all that. What I was about to tell you was that Uncle Curtis and Uncle Joe White had a system whereby if somehow some information came to one of them, that something was going on that was wrong or bad or something, one of them would investigate it. And by investigating it, I mean would get the state attorney or would get the sheriff or would get whoever they needed to go look into this and check into this and see what the deal is. And then if that were the case, whichever one had been the instigator would not try the case. The other one would try the case.
And this gets back to why Peel, what Peel's motive was.
Yes, my uncle had disciplined Joe Peel for representing both sides of a divorce case. And that didn't sit well with Peel. And my uncle, I think, while initially welcoming Joe Peel and Phil O'Connell, who came about the same time, to the bar in Florida, my uncle, more than anything else, was a teacher. He was an educator. More than anything else, he shaped the bar of Palm Beach County those years. And he did a good job. And Joe Peel, he could see, was going amok, just as Al Cohn could see Joe Peel was going amok. And Joe Peel was running Bolita.
Explain what Bolita is.
Bolita is a gambling game. I've never played it. I've never seen it. But I know that it was in the black community. And back then, of course, there was a white community and a black community, and things happened in the black community that the whites never knew about or didn't pay any attention to. It still does, but even more then. And I've learned from some of my black friends, about the Bolita and about running the Bolita and so on. It was a game of cards, and you bought a card, and there were numbers, and if the numbers were right, you won. If they weren't, you didn't.
And how was Joe Peel involved in the Bolita?
He was masterminding. He was running it.
He was making a profit off of it.
Absolutely. He was the one making all the money. Joseph worked for him, Lincoln worked for him, lots of other people worked for him.
And do you think your Uncle Curtis knew this?
I think he was onto it.
And
I don't know whether he had proof yet.
So do you think Joe Peel had him murdered because he was disciplined for representing both sides of a divorce case, retrospectively or prospectively thinking he might be disciplined for believing.
Definitely prospectively, not retrospectively. I don't mean that Joe Peel would go have my uncle killed because of what had already happened. No.
It's what he thought
It was
could happen.
what was coming down, what was coming toward him. I think it was, the murder was very definitely so that my uncle would not proceed with this investigation.
Now, is it true that that Joe Peel tried to have Phil O'Connell killed?
Yes, he had several things that he was contemplating killing Phil O'Connell with. One of the more interesting ones was that he had arranged to buy a bar of uranium, and he was going to put that under the car seat, Phil O'Connell's car seat, so that over a period of months he would be poisoned and die from radiation poisoning.
And why did he want to kill Phil O'Connell?
Because Phil O'Connell, this was after the murder of my uncle, Phil O'Connell was the main driving force behind that prosecution. Phil O'Connell and many other people said, who in the world would have done this? And the name Joe Peel kept coming up. Henry Lovern was the one who actually cracked the case. I guess you know the story.
Now, what other ways did he attempt to kill, or did he ever make the attempt on Phil O'Connell's life, or did he just contemplate it?
I don't know of any other.
What sort of organizations was your Uncle Curtis involved in? Was he in Rotary or Kiwanis? What churches did he attend? He was in the Tuscaloosa Club.
He was in the Tuscaloosa Club. He was a Mason.
Harmonia Lodge?
Yeah, I think so. I guess he was in the probably Rotary, but I don't know for sure.
Did he belong to a church?
Would have been the Congregational Church, I think, wouldn't it, Kath?
Well, I don't know. By that point, Aunt Midge and the girls were all Christian Science.
Aunt Midge was in Christian Science.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And I believe that he supported and attended church with her and the girls.
That may be.
Was
That may be.
the Chillingworth family religious over a period of generations?
Well, my grandmother used to go to the Congregational Church, which was catty-cornered across from their home, on Datura,
Right.
on that corner. My mother was Presbyterian, so we all went to Presbyterian Church. That's where Manly Caldwell.
The one downtown.
Not First Presbyterian downtown, but Memorial Presbyterian, which is this side of the Baptist Church. South Baptist Church.
Just about across from...
Woodlawn.
Right.
Yeah. My Uncle Walter, who was born in 1894, told me the story of seeing the first motorcycle ever in West Palm Beach. I'm not sure exactly what year it was, but he was a boy of maybe 14 years old, give or take. Probably 1907 or something like that. And he got on the motorcycle on Datura in front of the family home and got it started and couldn't get it stopped. And he wound up riding down Dixie, and he couldn't stop the thing until he saw that a grave had been dug over on Woodlawn Cemetery. And he stopped the motorcycle by running into the big pile of sand that was there.
Now, speaking of Woodlawn, is that where the Chillingworths are buried?
Yes.
Including Richard Jolly and
Richard
Charles
Jolly,
C.
Eunice.
And Curtis and his wife were never found.
Never found.
Is there a memorial marker?
I don't know whether there is over there or not. There may be. My mother and father are buried over there. Aunt Sis and Uncle Arn are buried over there.
In the Pioneer section, I assume, that early area where the other Pioneer families are buried.
I guess it is.
Was your Uncle Curtis an intellectual man, or was he just a bright guy who was disciplined and worked hard? Or all
Very
of the above?
intellectual. Very intellectual. Very, very high IQ guy.
And did that run in the family, or was it unique
Well, his
to
father
Curtis?
was very intelligent. I mean, you can't get a scholarship to Cornell.
But they were intellectually curious. They had
Yes.
interest outside of just
Absolutely.
their legal profession.
Absolutely.
Do you
No
have
question.
any examples of their
Well,
intellect?
gosh, I don't.
Seminars that he attended and banquets where there were guest speakers that we have in memorabilia, and on the margins there would be notes where he was critiquing the speakers and arguing back notes, that this is wrong or yes, this is very correct. Excellent speaker, poor speaker.
So he
Not-
rated him at the
He
end,
rated them and he critiqued
even if
them.
no one was ever going to see this
That's
again.
right.
Well-
There was only for his use.
But let me say this. There was, in the state of Florida, there wouldn't have been half a dozen people who would have challenged Uncle Curtis for his mastery of the law. Wouldn't have been. Not on any court, not anywhere. I mean, it wasn't that big a state. There weren't that many people. People knew each other. But he was an acknowledged scholar. And as I said, he was reversed fewer than 5 or 6 times in his entire career. And you had to go to the Supreme Court of Florida to get him reversed. And they weren't reversing him. He was right. He knew the law. He knew it cold. And my grandfather knew the law. My grandfather was, by all accounts, and I never met the man, but by all accounts, he was the most prominent attorney in Palm Beach County. In fact, when I went to work for Carl Fassetti, and Mr. Barrow gave me an abstract to read, it was on a piece of property down here a dentist wanted to buy to build a dentist office on Flagler, just north of here a few blocks. And I read it. And one of the remarkable things I found in there, Harvey, was in this abstract, all part of the Palm Beach County Public Records, is a letter from a New York attorney to a Florida attorney, explaining to the Florida attorney how the Florida lien law worked. Because the Florida attorney didn't get it, didn't understand it. And he says, now, if you still do not understand what it is I have told you, and you want to know how the law works, go ask Charles Chillingworth. He knows the law. He will tell you.
And that was recorded.
Absolutely. Part of the abstract.
Well, I appreciate your time very much, and I think I'll have many more questions after I have an opportunity to read this book that your grandfather wrote, and I hope that I can come back at a future date and we can pick up here with some additional stories. Thank you.